Actually, it was a colleague, Scott Glover, who was a federal courts reporter, and he had covered a couple of trials of doctors who were actually being prosecuted as drug dealers, and just picked up a lot of information, around the courthouse and from law enforcement sources that this was a much bigger problem that ought to be looked into. And he invited me to join him because I had a lot of health and medical reporting background. Our biggest data source were coroner's reports in Southern California, and we collected, we amassed a database of information on overdose deaths involving prescription drugs, people in Southern California who died from prescription drug overdoses. The data set was nearly 4,000 cases, and we had all the demographic information, the drugs that were involved, and the one thing that we got that was kind of really new was we were able to get, in many cases, the doctor who prescribed or doctors who prescribed the drugs, and we were able to match the drugs that they prescribed that were found at the scene, so they were still being used and relevant to the case, and then we were able to match that with toxicology tests. And so, our bottom line finding was that in 47% of the cases, nearly half, and it was a very conservative estimate because we had to throw out cases where there wasn't the doctor's full name or something like that. But so in at least 47% of the cases, we were able to match a doctor's prescription to the decedent to the cause of death. And so that says that, doctors are prescribing drugs that are killing people in big numbers. In 4 cases, we were able to interview the doctors who had a number of patients die. And in some cases, they weren't aware. In other cases, they were, but they didn't know the whole number. The medical board had no idea. We actually identified 71 doctors who had 3 or more patients die in a 6-year period, and that was absolute news to them. There were, I think, a handful of bills that were proposed in the legislature, and I think 3 of them passed. My memory is a little rusty on this, but to try and beef up the surveillance of medical practice around opioids, and to make sure that if you've got clusters of deaths around one doctor, that there's a way to find out about that and intervene. We began looking at OxyContin, and one of the things we started to notice was that Purdue Pharma does business around the world as Mundi Pharma, and we were able to see that they were kind of doing the same marketing and promotion campaign that they did in the United States decades earlier, trying to promote opioids, and in particular OxyContin, for chronic pain as opposed to just short-term pain, and they were taking it to really rapidly growing markets like Brazil and Asia and Europe. Fentanyl is huge. There's new drugs morphing every day. The death toll just keeps going up and up and up. I also think that there's a kind of a what is happening and what will happen to this generation, or really 2, of people who are addicted to both legal prescribed drugs and illegal drugs. Opioids are very, very hard to get off of. Families exhaust their resources putting people through, loved ones through rehab once, twice, a 3rd time, and then they die. So it's just, it's crippling to a huge tranche of society, and so, I think there's just a lot to be done.